Hey guys, my name is Lauren Boone for Aniwaya Education Services, and it's a day ending in Y, which means I'm here to explain best assessment practices. Now, we do have a new set of RTO standards, which are due to come in any day now, depending on when I release this video. And so RTOs have naturally been updating their policies and procedures, and everybody is asking the question, what is different under the new standards? Now, while there are a lot of things that are different, assessment is definitely not one of them. Assessments remain pretty consistent for the last couple of years, and even ASPA's interpretation of such has to a large extent remained consistent also. Now, I will say that we are definitely starting to see some differences here. However, I think that's probably more about the regulatory approach that that ASPA is taking specifically for CRICOS students at the moment. And obviously, there are a few things that the regulator and RTOs are having to do now to adapt to authenticity, specifically in the wake of the AI revolution. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. If you guys do, please like and subscribe. We do see that a lot of you guys haven't actually subscribed to our channel, and we would love to see you following us regularly. All right, so let's talk about authenticity. So authenticity sits under the rules of evidence. The definition under the standards is almost word for word. The assessment evidence presented is the student's own work. Now, in their new guidance, and I do recommend that you guys download their new practice guides. I will link that in the comments below. But what it says under authenticity is that you are able to assure authenticity of assessment judgments. Okay, so for example, by confirming the evidence belongs to the student being assessed and has not been plagiarized or generated with artificial intelligence tools, provides genuine knowledge of the person's skills and knowledge, verifying that the person you are enrolling, training, and assessing is the same person that will be issued with a qualification or statement of attainment. Now, obviously, that supporting guidance has been updated in the wake of AI and just in the massive amounts of AI student-generated assessments that we are seeing. So I get a lot of questions in relationship to what should my policy be? How do I approach this? And really, it is going to differ to some extent depending on the cohort that you're dealing with. Now, what I will say is that the vast majority of students now are very AI savvy. They know how to use AI and they are utilizing AI. What I will also say is that a lot of students, even trainers, are still being pretty lazy in how they use this. So there's a lot of giveaways that we tend to see depending on the AI that you're using or the AI that the student is using. There's a lot of formatting tells. AI loves to speak in dot points. They are also using a lot more formatting and emojis nowadays. So what you'll see is like that combination of like the keywords have been bolded. You're going to see a lot of dot points. You're generally going to see an Americanized spelling utilizing Z. And it is something that even if you've got it set to Australian language, Word does not pick up very well. And you're also starting to see the introduction of these stupid emojis. So just depending on how savvy the student is with their AI, there can often be a lot of those sorts of tells. And the first thing that I recommend is that all your trainers and assessors, or if you are a trainer and assessor, do vary the different platforms that you're utilizing AI through. So go and use Grok, go and use Claude, use GPT. Obviously, GPT is the largest one that we're seeing being utilized in the sector at the moment. And make sure that you're, pretty regularly checking in with each of those technologies. I do still believe that people are the best mechanism in order to be able to detect it. I do get a lot of questions and things to say, should we utilize services such as Turnitin or AI detection services? My personal experience is that that's very easily hackable. I've been able to convince GPT that something was authentic when it wasn't. I've been able to convince them that it was authentic when it wasn't, vice versa, all of those sorts of things. So I have, and I've beat Turnitin, I don't know how many times. So personally, I don't know whether or not those things are very reliable. I think the best way that you can actually go about detecting whether or not somebody is utilizing plagiarism, whether they're utilizing collusion, or whether or not they are utilizing AI, is for a trainer and assessor to have a relationship with the student and to be able to know what that student's capacity is. So nowadays, I think it's honestly quite evident when we've got students who are utilizing AI. The other thing that we do when we do some of our validation services is that we will cross compare students' examples. So historically, what used to be common was students would purchase like they would purchase the assessments from previous students. That's very rare now. Well, it's not very rare, but it's certainly far more rare now. Nowadays, people are utilizing GPT. Even if they are purchasing an older version of the assessment, they are, still running it through GPT quite often. So what I think is going to, what I think we're going to see over the next couple of years is we're going to start to see some slight differences in our assessment approaches. So obviously one of the things that we want to be doing here, guys, is we want to be trying to, where at all possible, utilize some of that additional performance criteria or knowledge or performance evidence where we're asking students to verbally communicate. And we want students to generate something and then be able to speak to it. And so the speak to it part of the process is where we're actually going to be getting that evidence of authenticity from the students. The reality is that the vast majority of positions moving forward in the future are going to utilize AI. All of my staff use AI. If I ask them to design an assessment tool, I expect AI is going to be utilized as part of that process. I also expect that a human being is going to sit down and spend time checking it, making sure it's correct, making sure the information in there is accurate. And I think this is where we really need to be thinking about how we're interpreting skills. So when we ask somebody to develop a policy and procedure, is it okay for them to develop that policy and procedure, support it with support from AI, and then check it all themselves and make sure that it's correct and make sure the links are accurate, and make sure that the policy is correct to what needs to be done by the staff and relevant to the organization? Absolutely, I think it is. That's something that would be expected and accepted in the business world. And so therefore it should be expected and accepted within RTO land. What is not acceptable is students copying the question into GPT, getting the response, copying it over, not reading it, not having any knowledge of it, and then not being able to speak to it. So I think we'll start to see RTOs that are spot checking validity of assessments by doing, verbal confirmation. Certainly in Aniwaya, we're building a lot of processes in whereby if a student has to develop a policy, part of the implementation of that policy is them delivering a presentation on it and therefore having to speak to it and having to speak to all the knowledge in it. Designing practical assessments so that they validate a lot of the knowledge that's coming, that underpinning knowledge that's been assessed within the knowledge assessment parts and things like that. So I think a lot of those sorts of mechanisms are going to come into play. We're also seeing AI services that are coming up now whereby students are being asked to complete their assessments and they are, we're using keyloggers. We are using, services that look at where the eyes are to see whether or not a student is flipping in between screens. The keyloggers are tracking whether or not they're copying and pasting everything. So, it's going to continue to be a little bit of a cat and mouse game. Ultimately, at the end of the day, as an assessor, what you want from your assessors, what you want as an assessor is you want to be able to be having a relationship with the student that you're making the assessment decision on, and being able to determine whether or not the types of responses that you're receiving would make sense for the interactions, the verbal interactions that you're having with the student, and where those two things are really way off. Having a chat with your students. The other thing that you want to make sure you've got is that you do have a policy. So, like a collusion plagiarism policy. I know that we also provide students with examples of the ways that prompts can be used within AI and the way that prompts can't be used within AI. So there's an education process that's happening between the RTOs and the students, and also between the RTOs and the trainers and assessors in the ways that you can use AI and that it is acceptable to use AI, and the ways that it is not acceptable to use AI. So I think that that's a really important part of the puzzle as well. So guys, that is it. Authenticity is a little bit different. If you want any more information on this, you can check out the 27,000 other podcasts that I've done on principles of assessment and rules of evidence, and I'll link to some of those ones below. I hope that you guys have a wonderful day heading into June or July. We are halfway through the year already. How quickly did that go? But if you enjoyed this episode, please give us a like. If you disagree, feel free to do so, but do so and duke it out respectfully. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. My name is Lauren Boone for Aniwaya Education Services.